Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Patricia Kaye Humphreys came to this drive-in here in Northwest Houston with friends in late June.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
What do you remember about that day?
Well, I remember it very vividly.
I don't understand why there aren't some people in the area who have some information that they could come forward with it.
It's been 46 years since Patricia Kaye Humphreys went missing from a drive-in movie theater.
Something dark happened.
The Thunderbird Drive-In kept popping up and popping up and popping up.
Police say they have very little to go on.
Her decomposing body found in the woods 6 months later. She'd been strangled and possibly raped. She was only 15 years old.
Who did it? Who did it?
Her murder changed a city forever.
Quite a slap in the face to know that evil was so close and so close to all of us. It affected all of us.
What happened that night at the Thunderbird? That first night of freedom for Kaye and her sister, when Mom told them they could go to the movies but come straight home. Who was waiting in the shadows? Who might have seen something? Who's talking nearly 5 decades later?
In her last hours, she must have wondered where was somebody to protect her.
Disappearance at the Drive-In. This is Unsolved. Summer nights at a drive-in theater. For a teen in the 70s, it was freedom. Not a lot of heavy responsibilities back then. You and your friends in your parents' car as the sun went down. Maybe an arm around your girlfriend, holding hands with your boyfriend. The drive-in was an escape. At least it felt like it anyway. Alone in the dark. But who knew who was watching you while you were watching the screen? On that hot June night, sisters Debra and Kaye Humphreys came to the Thunderbird Drive-In in their mom's white Mercury Montego. A big deal. It was the first time Mom let her teen girls take the family car out alone. And she told them, go straight to the movies, come right home after, and have fun.
It was a big deal, and her mom couldn't know that Eddie was driving.
Teenagers. Deb ignored what her mom said, as 16-year-old girls do. The sisters were just a year apart, but it was Deb who called the shots.
Debbie was the older sister and kind of bossed her around. I mean, I guess that's what older sisters do.
Deb drove straight to get her boyfriend, Eddie. And after Eddie, they picked up another classmate, Mike. Rhonda Pizzitola remembers it clearly because a few minutes later, the group showed up at her house, all packed into that white Montego.
They asked me, do you want to go to the drive? And I said, yeah, hold on, let me go ask my mom. And my mom wouldn't let me go. Let's say she wasn't fond of Mike or Eddie. She thought they were trouble.
That night at the Thunderbird was a Dustin Hoffman double feature. Lenny, followed by Midnight Cowboy. The group stayed for both, and after the first movie, they walked to the concession stand to buy snacks and cigarettes. That's what Debra later told police. The cigarette machine was either broken or didn't have the right brand of smokes, so 15-year-old Kaye said she would walk to the 7-Eleven down the street. She went alone.
That's why we're here. Somewhere between leaving her vehicle, walking to the concession stand, something dark happened. And I say that because it's almost as if she vanished without a trace.
If Kaye was headed to the 7-Eleven, she would have taken a right, leaving the theater. No one at the 7-Eleven ever reported seeing her that night. We found Thunderbird workers from back then who point out there was a closer convenience store to the left, the Clay Fina service station. You see it in these aerials from '76. Several former drive-in employees say that part of Clay Road was better lit, though still not a road people walked. No sidewalk, not many businesses. And remember, this is 1975. No surveillance cameras. No eyewitnesses ever reported seeing Kaye walking, so who really knows which way she went to get those cigarettes? Or if she ever left the drive-in lot in the first place.
As she walked away to what turned out to be her death, I got a feeling she was doing a favor for somebody. She was going to get them cigarettes. So she was going to go the extra mile and walk to a convenience store. And I know Deb was just racked with guilt her whole life.
You never blamed her, though.
No. I made it a point to not ever say anything to her that would sound like blame. The officers told me there's nothing you can do with your daughter who's missing, but you need to be very careful with the daughter you still have.
Debra returned home that night with a pit in her stomach. Her youngest sister wasn't with her. Kaye never came back to the car for the second movie. The group had searched for her, but everyone thought Kaye must have just walked home on her own. Deb hoped that was the case. The Humphreys duplex was less than a mile from the Thunderbird, just a 15-minute walk. But Kaye wasn't home. Deb woke up their mother, and the two started calling the girls' friends.
It was like 3 a.m. and my mom came into my bedroom and said, hey, it's Mrs. Humphreys on the phone. Have you seen Kaye? I was startled awake, and I looked at the clock, and I thought, well, no, I'm kind of asleep here, you know. And then the next day when I woke up, I was wondering if I had dreamed it, and I talked to my mom, says, no, Kaye's missing.
The day after Kaye Humphreys disappeared, missing posters went up all over Northwest Houston. Pat Humphreys, last seen at Thunderbird Drive-In, believed abducted. Only friends and family called Kaye by her middle name. And inside the Humphreys home, Kaye's mother spoke with ABC News from her youngest daughter's bedroom. Big sister Debra watching on. A stoic Pat Humphreys described her missing daughter as the thoughtful girl who always included everyone, never met a stranger.
You know, if she goes to a dance, if there's someone sitting around that's not having a good time, she will go over and, you know, introduce herself and see to it, or try to see to it, that they also have a good time.
Is she the kind of person who might run away or might think about running away?
There is no doubt in my mind that that child would never run away.
Kaye, the quiet one, who didn't always say what she was thinking, instead she wrote it down.
Perhaps a person's poetry speaks better for them than anything else. Just before Pat was missing, she wrote a poem called Free. And the first few lines read like this. I live in a good home. I have a nice family. I have good friends I like to see every day. That doesn't sound like something a runaway would write.
Kaye was very quiet, but she was always trying to find her place. She kind of always throw in some jabs and fight her sister on certain things. She was headstrong, and I know she wrote poetry and did things like that, but she was trying to break away, as we all were.
That was the last time I saw her.
I didn't see her. I probably saw her in school.
Russell Glass and Rhonda Pizzitola spent a lot of time growing up with Deb and Kaye at the Humphreys house. When Kaye disappeared, police went to them for help.
Asking me where I had last been, you know, when did I last see her? And of course it was that evening. Did she say anything to you?
I remember it being splattered all over the news. I remember they having manhunts and her face being on the news all the time.
Every fourth person in Houston today moved here since 1970.
Houston was changing.
Houston, Tranquility Base here.
The decade before had been good for this city.
From Earth to the moon and back, the Apollo 14 mission has finally ended here at the Manned Spacecraft Center's Lunar Receiving Lab.
Houston sent the first humans to the moon. The Astrodome was the 8th wonder of the world. More and more families were moving in because Houston was safe, cheap, and easygoing.
There was a lot more freedoms. I mean, you have to remember back then, when you were 18, you could drink and drive. You know, you could drink and drive. It was like, okay, yeah. I remember being stopped by a cop, what you drink, a Lone Star. Oh, okay, that's good to hear. Yes, sir, it is. It is good. And you're drinking?
Kids then, we were always outside. Either riding bikes or around the corner. We didn't lock our cars. We didn't, yeah, it was safe. I don't even think we locked our doors.
An innocent-looking Pasadena home, but some of the people who went in were carried out in plastic bags.
That relaxed way of thinking started to disappear in the early 70s, when more than 24 young boys were tortured and murdered across the city. Serial killer Dean the Candyman Quarrel and 2 teen accomplices were responsible for what became known as the Houston mass murders.
The trail of graves stretched into the piney woods of East Texas near Sam Rayburn Lake.
Things were turning. Things weren't as pretty as they used to be. So yeah, there was an uproar. A very young girl was missing, and I felt that they would have done anything they could to find out what was going on.
As word spread that Kaye was missing, Johnny Humphreys, living in California, got the call from Kaye's mom, his ex-wife. Their daughter was gone.
Kaye would never do anything like run away. So to me, there was only one alternative. She was taken.
Johnny got on a plane to Houston and was at the Thunderbird that evening.
You searched up and down Clay Road, is that right?
And the surrounding area. There wasn't this big industrial area then.
The only sign of Kaye, a shoe found on the side of the road near the drive-in. Possibly it was Kaye's. Police collected it.
And then they finally came back probably a day or two later and said, the picture we're getting is that it was probably the person who took Kaye was probably somebody she might have known, but was definitely from the school, and there are some kids here who know something, and sooner or later somebody should come forward and start telling us things.
But no one talked. Days turned into weeks, turned into a month. No Kaye. Investigators interviewed classmates, the drive-in owner, workers from the factories out there.
You know, after that, Debbie would come over to my house and I'd walk around the block with her every day. We'd walk every day. Either I'd go and get her or she'd come and get me. Most of the time she came and got me, and she just would, you know, just cry. She didn't talk much. And she says, you know, she just held on to hope and was playing the scene in her head, but not much talking. We did a lot of walking.
When you had to return to California without any answers of what had happened to your daughter, you had to get back on a plane. What was that like?
That was just numbness. I think I just didn't feel anything at that point other than numb.
While Johnny was feeling numb, Kaye's mom, Pat, was feeling something else. 5 weeks after Kaye went missing, Pat got remarried for the 3rd time. The groom? Her old high school boyfriend from back in Henrietta, Texas, Thomas Randy Scarber. And then Pat and Randy left town, took Deb with them.
I can remember the last day. I don't know why I'm getting teary-eyed. She came to my house and we just stayed outside, and she said they would be moving. Yeah, I remember that. But didn't see her after that.
Kaye was still out there, still missing. But the newlyweds left to start a new life in Nebraska. How could a mother leave the only home her daughter knew? As summer turned into fall, still no Kaye. The drive-in closed for the season. Her classmates returned to school. Kaye would have been a sophomore at Northbrook High that year. With the holidays fast approaching, a few missing posters lingered on telephone poles, but Kaye's story faded from the headlines. Then, on November 30th, a group of boys shooting BB guns in a field behind a church found human bones. Scattered nearby, tan pants, a red and white blouse, and a small gold ring with the letter P. 158 days after Patricia Kaye Humphreys disappeared, she was found in the woods behind a Baptist church 18 miles east of the drive-in.
Police say they have very little to go on, but they have more now than just a missing person file. They have the remains of the body, and they have a location.
The scar on Kaye's skull from a surgery she had as a baby confirmed it was her. Police think she may have been raped before she was strangled. Johnny got the call in San Francisco. That afternoon, he was back in Houston at police headquarters asking for help.
My only feeling was that it's not a desolate area, and I don't understand why there aren't some people in the area who have some information that they could come forward with that would be helpful to the police, so that whoever did it can't be free to do it again.
And like justice wasn't done then, but if justice could be done now.
Almost 50 years later, he's still asking.
It's like, is there something that can still be done? It's got to be something that can still be done to find who did this.
And that's why you got on a plane and came back here.
Oh yeah, repeatedly. In her last hours, she must have wondered where was somebody to protect her. Of course, my dad. So that's what I think about.
Maybe someone at the church saw something. Maybe they were having some meeting. Maybe they saw a suspicious vehicle. Maybe they saw someone that was outside of the community that they were not used to seeing. Whoever it was, we need the help of the public. Because number one, we need to try to find out the timeline of what happened.
How did Kaye get from the drive-in to the woods behind the church? Was she picked up willingly while walking to get cigarettes? Was she grabbed? Investigators have always believed that Kaye wasn't alive long after she went missing. They need to nail down a timeline. What happened in those moments before she was murdered? But so much has changed around here since 1975.
This church, well, the building is still the same, but the congregation is different. New families have moved in and out of the surrounding houses. We've talked to neighbors, dug up old records of who owned the land. Most people are dead or long moved away, disappeared.
So the pathway to where the suspect or suspects had to either dispose of her there or the homicide scene occurred there, you had to know that route. You had to know where that church was and know how to maneuver through the pathway to an open area where the ending occurred.
Inside Kaye's cold case file are the interviews detectives did back in '75. To understand her final moments, they questioned the friends who were last with her. According to Rhonda, who remember saw the group right before they went to the drive-in, 5 people were in Kaye's mom's white Mercury Montego. She was sure Deb's boyfriend, Eddie Garcia, was driving. Deb was in the front passenger seat. Kaye and another classmate, Mike Hunter, were in the back, along with another girl, whose face Rhonda just can't see anymore. Detective Darkus Shorten says there's no mention of a 5th friend in the police notes, but Rhonda is sure she was there. If only police could go back and ask. But people important to the case, Eddie, Mike, and Debra, have all since passed away. Deb died in 2013 from breast cancer, never knowing what happened to her little sister.
Before Debbie passed away, I received a phone call from her. I hadn't heard from them after they moved away for 35 years. And she talked about it. You know, she says, Russell, I'm at peace with it.
Kaye's mother and the man she married after Kaye went missing have also since died. We may never know why they left town so quickly before Kaye's body was found. Months before Pat died, Russell spoke to her too.
And I asked Mrs. Humphreys, you know, do you hope they find him? She goes, Russell, it's in God's hands. I can talk about it, but I don't care anymore. It's up to God. And I said, I was so happy to hear her say that.
It's also up to anyone keeping secrets. There are people who know something. People who've heard rumors about that night at the drive-in. Detective Darkus Shorten is sure of it.
And she may have made contact with someone and say, pick me up. I'll be at the concession stand at this time. We need to know that.
46 years is a long time to keep a secret. So who's going to talk?
Her friends say she left the car for a few moments to come to the snack bar here. She never came back to the car, and they never saw her again.
Nearly 50 years ago, that reporter stood about here trying to drum up new leads after Kaye's body was found. The snack bar would have been right over there. 2 movie screens, one in front and one behind, but all that's gone now. The Thunderbird was torn down decades ago, and since then, all this industry has popped up. All the change has made it really difficult for police to figure out how that night played out in 1975.
Nearly 5 decades of change. Not just new buildings, new roads, new houses, businesses, schools. Houston is built up. A lot of those open fields and wooded lots are gone. Where Kaye disappeared, where she was found, looks nothing like it did in the 70s. And that's why police rely on people who remember what it was like.
I want all of Patricia Humphrey's friends, her classmates, people who were in her social surroundings, to just work with Cold Case to try to give us an idea of her thinking. Listen, at that age, she probably had a boyfriend, and she didn't tell her parents that she had a boyfriend. We want to know that. It's okay to tell us that, because that information is very useful and resourceful.
I just can't believe that someone would have some knowledge and not want to come forward and want to help, even after all this time.
That's what keeps Johnny coming back to the place where his daughter spent her last few hours alive. It's painful, of course. If you thought 46 years was enough time to come to terms with grief, you'd be wrong. But there's a strange sort of comfort being here.
I guess I sort of compartmentalize. It's like it doesn't do any good to let my feelings get in the way of action. And all my mind really is what can be done? What have we not yet tried that could turn up someone that would be helpful, that would give us a clue, give us a place to look?
Grief is a tricky thing. You can bury it for almost half a century, and then suddenly it's back. That same pain from the days and weeks after Kaye disappeared.
You know, there was a lot of sleepless nights, and I prayed for the family a lot. I prayed for their healing. It's the best I could do. I always say, you know, we can lean on each other, but grief is typically alone at night. You know, you go to sleep alone.
This is their form of canvassing. Of course. So you're going to...
There is hope. It's in the evidence in Kaye's cold case file. Police are still not ready to talk about publicly. Secrets investigators keep close. Some of it has been turned over to the FBI. Detective Shorten says they're looking at suspects from other Houston crimes around that time.
Who had a potential of being a kidnapper or a predator. If those individuals are in our city during the time of that homicide, then that's another source.
She goes back to those scratchy film clips too, to watch how a mother dealt with her missing daughter, to listen to a father begging the public for help, to observe an older sister afraid and wrecked with grief, moments frozen in time.
You could tell by looking at the archives the passion that both reporters had. They literally sat down on the sofa with family and looked at old photos and her dolls and her pets. I mean, all of that was very personable. So looking back at it, it really re-energized me, to be honest.
There comes a point in life when every parent has to let go. You watch your kid go out alone for the first time, and you worry. Most kids do come home. Most kids. 15-year-old Patricia Kaye Humphreys didn't. She came to the drive-in to watch a movie, and that was the end. Her family's future changed forever, but her story doesn't end here. If you were there that night, if you saw anything, call police. Help them figure out what happened to Patricia Kaye Humphreys. I'm Courtney Fisher. This is Unsolved.